உள்ள ஏதோ பச்சை கலரா இருக்கு, அப்படிதான் இருக்குமா? ம், அந்த பச்சை கலரா இருக்கிறது மட்டும் கொணக்கொடன்னு இருக்கு. இந்த ஒரு ஃபோட்டோ அனுப்பியிருக்கேன் பார்த்தீங்களா? வாசனையா? லைட்டாக கெட்டு போகிற மாதிரி தான் வருது. ஹலோ, இல்லை சிலது கெட்டு போகிற மாதிரி வருது, சிலது நல்லா தான் இருக்கு. ம் 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 சரி. ம் 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 சரி. ம் 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 தயிர் சாப்பிட்டேம்மா. ம். இப்போ
கரெக்டாக
பால் எடுத்திருக்கேன். ஆமாம். ம். இப்போ
சரி
ஊற்றிடுறேன் பால்.
சரிக்கா சரி இப்போ கூட
ம்.
ஊற்ற வேணா கொஞ்சம் கழிச்சு ஊற்று
கொஞ்ச நேரம் கழிச்சா? ம்.
அந்த குடிக்க அது பார்த்து எடுத்து வந்துக்கலாம்
ம்.
கரெக்டாக அந்த மிச்ச பால் அங்கே ஃப்ரிட்ஜில் வச்சுட்டியா மிக்ஸ் தயிரை
ஆமாம்மா. ம்.
ரெண்டு இது சரி 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 அப்போ அது கூட இருக்கு நாளைக்கு இல்லை
ஆமாம். ம்.
இல்லைன்னா அதை வச்சுட்டு இதை மோராக்கி குடிச்சிடணும் டைம் இருக்கும்போது அதை எடுத்துட்டு வந்து அங்கே
ம்.
கூட மோரா வச்சு குடிச்சிடலாம் சரி தானே
ம்.
அது அன்பாயில் இருக்குன்னா இப்போ போய் எப்போ பாயில் பண்ணுவாங்க
எதுமா?
அப்புறமா வேணா கிளாஸ் முடிச்சுட்டு வேணா அதை பாயில் பண்ணிட்டு வந்துரு இல்லைன்னா
ம்.
இது ம்
இப்போ கிளாஸ் ஆரம்பிக்கிறதுக்கு முன்னாடி வேக வச்சுட்டா அது பாட்டுக்கு வெந்துட்டு இருக்க போகுது.
சரி இல்லைன்னா அதில்
ம்.
பெரிய சட்டியில் சாம்பார் அதை வச்சு
ஆமாம்.
பண்ணியா
பண்ணிக்கணும். ம். சாதா தண்ணியே போதும்டா.
சாதா தண்ணி போதாமா
ம்.
அது ஒரு 10 மினிட்ஸ் வேக வைக்கணும் 10 மினிட்ஸ்
சாஃப்டாக வர வரைக்கும்.
அது வெந்து முடிக்கும் போது எதுக்கு ஒரு 10 மினிட்ஸ்க்கு அப்புறம் ஒரு குட்டி பருக்கத்தில நல்லா
ம்.
கத்தி இறங்கி வெந்துச்சுன்னா எனக்கு கொஞ்சம் நேரம் வேகணும்
ம்.
ரொம்ப குழம்பு வேகக்கூடாது ரொம்பையும் வேகாமல் இருக்கக்கூடாது கத்தி ரொம்ப சாப்பிட்டா போகக்கூடாது
ம்.
கரெக்டாக போச்சுன்னா இது ஆச்சுன்னு அர்த்தம்
ம்.
நல்லா வேக போட்டுரு 800 ஆரம்பி அது கொதிக்க ஆரம்பிச்சோன்னா
ம். 500. ம்.
அந்த 800 டைம்லேருந்து 10 நிமிஷம் போயிட்டு
ம்.
ரொம்ப மேலே வந்து ஒரு 2 மினிட்
ம்.
தண்ணி
ம்.
சரி
ம். சரி.
பலாப்பழம் சாப்பிட்டியா
இதை சாப்பிட்டுட்டு இருக்கேம்மா.
சரி
ம். ம். பாய். Good evening, everyone. I hope my slides are visible and you're able to hear me. So, today we'll be solving problems based on the fifth week, and the topic is creativity in research. So, I have some about 10 questions. So, first I'll be showing the question, and you can take 2 to 3 minutes to read and understand the question. And whatever you think is the answer, you can type in the chat box. Then we will be discussing the solution for that particular question. And these are just practice problems to help you solve the actual assignment problems. So let's get started with the first question for today. So most of you have got the answer correct. The correct answer is option A. Does anybody want to explain why you think that the answer is option A? Okay, so let's discuss all the options one by one. The first option is knowledge in your field and other fields. So that is correct because it is important to have knowledge in whatever is our field of research. But definitely, if you have knowledge from other fields, then that will definitely help in your research. And these days, I think there is a lot of focus on interdisciplinary research as well. So it is always beneficial to have knowledge from other fields as well. So option A is correct. Option B, if you are doing good science, communication skills are not important. So that is not correct because the whole purpose of science is to uh, whatever new findings we get, that we have to communicate to the world. So it's not just important if we discover or if we find out something, the rest of the world has to understand the work that we have done and our findings. So we also have to communicate it well. That's why option B is not correct. Option C, it is possible to become an expert in a field only if you are brilliant. Option C is also not correct because it is not necessary that you have to be brilliant. As long as you read papers regularly and keep yourself updated and you're working hard and you can understand the subject, then you can slowly become an expert in the field. And option D, if you are brilliant, you don't have to read other papers in the field. So this is also not correct. Whatever, like, even though you may be very experienced in that area, or intuitively you may be brilliant, you should always follow the latest literature and latest research to know what is happening in the field. And another reason to keep reading papers is that only then we will know if some experiment or some hypothesis has been tested and published or not. Otherwise, we may be again doing the same thing that others have already done. So that's why the fourth option is false. So if there are no doubts in the first question, we can move on to the second question. Any doubts?
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes, good evening.
Thank you for initiating the lecture, ma'am. Ma'am, though out of all the four options which are available, number one is the right option, but I feel the option answer is very conservative. You have written knowledge in your field only. Can you elaborate why the word only written? It could have been knowledge in your field essentially or paramountly in other fields. Only is a very conservative and
Yeah,
reservative answer.
only is not a very appropriate term here. Like, more, the wording, if only was not there, that would be better. Like, knowledge in your field and other fields, that would have been better. Before I upload the slides, I will change that wording.
Great, ma'am.
You're
Thank you.
correct, yes, yes. Okay. Okay, let's go to the second question. So these questions have more than one correct option. So there may be one correct or multiple correct answers as well. You can think based on that. So this question, I think different people have mentioned different options. So this is based on like the types of intelligence, mainly synthetic intelligence, technical intelligence, sorry, and practical intelligence, and analytical intelligence, not technical, sorry. So synthetic intelligence, like from the name itself, you can guess that it means like building something new from like by combining different ideas. So that is the meaning of synthetic intelligence. And analytical intelligence means like if there is a big problem, then you break down into smaller problems and going about it in a more systematic way. And then finally there is practical intelligence, which is like basically intelligence in day-to-day life, etc. So the first option is about project work. So in a project work means typically we will be doing some uh, build something or do some research. So that is more of doing something new. So that will be synthetic intelligence, not analytical intelligence. So option A is not correct. Option B, coursework is an application of analytical intelligence. So option B is correct because in coursework you learn new concepts and you have to like solve some problems, etc. So that is correct. Option C, doing well in a job interview, not just due to technical skills but also confidence, communication is an example of practical intelligence. That is also correct. Like practical intelligence is how to behave in everyday, day to day life, etc. And option D, synthetic intelligence involves finding the one correct solution to a problem. So that finding one correct solution, that doing that in a more systematic way, that would apply more for analytical intelligence. But synthetic intelligence is also more creative in nature, and sometimes there may not be single correct answer, etc. So the correct answer is option B and option C.
How BTech is application of analytical intelligence only? Why it should be only analytical intelligence? That is not a means not a convincing statement. No?
Just coursework alone, if you see, then that would be more of analytical intelligence. That's why coursework has been mentioned in the statement.
No, coursework also it will be literature kind or maths 10 means analysis will not come at BTech level based on what they have studied. Which analysis means any example of BTech analysis they do actually it comes in project only. Like
Like not just projects, may I mean, like even in coursework you will have to solve some assignment problems and all. So those will be an example of analytical intelligence, because you have to understand the concepts and then apply it and get the solution, right?
that is not analysis according to me, that is application oriented means based on okay it may be right but I'm not convinced with this one. It cannot
Yeah,
be like
analytical intelligence doesn't mean like analysis, data analysis, not that exactly. So, analytical intelligence meaning like you have to apply some concept and get the solution, something like that, or break down a problem into smaller statements. The terminology is like analytical intelligence, so I think you got confused with analysis.
can you
It's
just
not just that.
tell the difference between what do you mean by synthetic intelligence and analytical intelligence, and how we can means what level that does that mean that only at PhD or MTech research kind of thing synthetic intelligence comes, and there we are not applying analytical. We apply analytical there also, no? If we are
Yeah, there
sound in
also
our subject,
we
then only we'll
correct,
go
correct.
for
Yeah,
this.
there like even from project or in research, definitely we have to apply analytical intelligence as well. But synthetic intelligence meaning you are generating like something new. Like in the
Yes.
name itself, it is there, right? Synthetic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That is the main difference.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go to the third question. So, the third question is correct the following statements. So, in the first statement, it is given 1,000 hours of effort is required to become an expert in a field, but there is a slight change here. It is not 1,000, it is 10,000, and it's not just like any work, but you have to really focus and concentrate and work on it. Only then you can become an expert. And option B, going to the lab because you have a manuscript submission deadline, is an example of. Here it is given as intrinsic motivation. So basically, there are two types: intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation meaning that the motivation comes from within us, that we may be, in general, we may be liking the subject, so we are interested to work on it. But extrinsic motivation means because of external factors we work for it, so that is extrinsic motivation. Here in this example, if there is a manuscript submission deadline, then that is an external factor which is making us to work, so that would be an example of extrinsic motivation. And option C, going to the lab because you are excited about the result of your experiment, is an example of intrinsic motivation. That is correct because you are naturally excited to do the experiment and see what will be the result. So option C is correct. Option D, only if you have tangible results, it means you have worked. So this is also not necessarily true, especially in research. There are a lot of hurdles that come in the way of doing like high level experiments. So sometimes we may be putting all the efforts, we may be working a lot of hours, but even if one small thing goes wrong in the middle, then the final output will not be there. But that still, from that process we may be learning something. So even if there is no tangible effort, the work we put in, that will still definitely help us in the long run. So option C is correct as such. The other statements have some minor corrections.
After corrections, all options are correct, no?
Yeah. So if they ask like just which option is correct, then only option C will be correct. But here they have said to correct the statement, so that's why I've made the changes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But for
Madam,
your
but it was said as a
assignments,
10,000 hours only, not 1,000 hours.
here in the originally it is given 1,000, then I have changed it to 10,000.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. For your assignments, most likely they won't ask these type of questions. This is just for practice. Your assignment questions will just be like multiple option correct. Okay, let's go to the fourth question. So the fourth question is based on the Yorks-Dodson curve. So in the x-axis you have how much pressure or how much stress somebody is facing, and in the y-axis we have the performance. So the curve, if you see, it is initially it is the performance is increasing with stress, but after a certain threshold, actually the performance reduces with stress. So the initial starting stage is hypostress, where the person is not stressed at all, or like they don't care about the work. So then in that case, for example, if the person is very carefree, then they may not be coming to the lab, they may not bother to finish the work. So at that stage the performance is low, and then as it increases to eustress, then the performance also increases. So eustress is like an optimal level of stress, because in that state you care about the work, and so your performance will increase. But when you go to hyper stress, you'll be so stressed out, so anxious that you won't be able to think properly. And finally there is distress, where the person is completely burnt out and they're not able to perform at all. So the correct answer is option B. Stress in optimal levels is good. I think this one most of you have got it right. Let's go to the fifth question. So the fifth question is based on this plot that was discussed in the class about uh, progress in research. So if you look at the graph, initially the slope is very less and the progress is also very low. And that makes sense, because initially when you're just starting out, you'll be reading papers, you have to standardize experiments, etc. So in the initial starting phases, the progress may be slightly lower. But as the days progress, then you would have standardized your experiments, you may have read more papers, etc. So then your expertise in the field, you slowly start gaining more and more expertise, and then in the middle phase there is like a rapid increase in the progress, and finally after a while it uh, saturates based on the research problem. So this kind of pattern is the log sigmoidal curve. It is not like a linear curve. For example, if you are doing a PhD of 4 years, and if you are publishing some 3 to 4 papers, it won't be like first year you publish one paper, second year you publish one paper, like that. Most likely in your third or fourth year you will be publishing the maximum number of papers, which makes sense according to this graph as well. So it does not follow a linear curve, it follows this kind of a log sigmoidal curve where initially the progress is slow and then there is uh, a rapid increasing phase and finally it saturates. So option A and option D both are correct. So I hope you have seen this graph from already from the lecture as well. If not, you can go and rewatch the lecture. Okay, let's go to the next question, the sixth question. So let's discuss the sixth question now. Most of you have answered in the chat box. The sixth question is, which approach is correct for learning about a new field? So the concept behind this question is the matching of skill level and challenge level. So ideally you have to so what is ideal is starting from a low skill low challenge and then going to high skill high challenge. So in this example, reading papers from the field directly would be like a high challenge level, and because we are just starting at that stage our skill is low, so when there is a mismatch, like if we have low skill but we are trying to do something that is very highly challenging, then we may get demotivated and we may not be able to understand much. So option A is not correct. Start by reading most cited papers. And option B, start by reading an elementary textbook. Option B is correct because when you are very new to the field, your skill level will be low. So you have to initially start with a challenge also that is slightly easier to handle, like reading an elementary textbook. And option C, keep reading the textbook again and again. Here also again it will be like a mismatch, because once you have read the textbook, then your skill level has increased. So if you read it again, then that you may get bored if your skill level is high. But if you're choosing a problem that is not that challenging, then it will not be interesting to you. You may be getting bored, so that also won't be very appropriate. And option D, read textbooks to get the basics and then read papers. So option D is correct. So initially when the skill level is low, then you have to do something easy like reading a textbook, and once you have developed more skills in the field by reading the textbook, then you can do something more challenging like reading papers. So the correct options are option B and option D. So in the chat box, someone has asked about the marking scheme. So if you have, suppose there are three options correct, but only if you have marked two, then you will get partial marking. But even if you mark any one wrong answer, then you won't get any marks.
Ma'am, I have a doubt here.
Yes.
Ma'am, don't you feel like option B is already absorbed in option D? Because both
Yeah.
tend to the same thing, no?
Yeah. In both, they are saying that initially we have to read some textbook. And this is multi-option correct, right? So both B and D are correct here.
All right, all right.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the seventh question then. Yeah, so the marking scheme is if there are three options correct, but you have selected two options, then you will get partial marks. But if you have selected even a single wrong option, then you won't get any marks. If you have not selected any wrong answer, then you will be getting partial marks. So this question is about a little bit about ethics in research and plagiarism. Let's go over the options one by one. Option A, privacy of research subject is not important and all details about them must be published. This is not correct because even though they may have consented to participating in the research, you should not give all their details and give any identification details. Basically, their identity must not be revealed. Option B, clinical studies must be done without the consent of the participants so that the results are reliable. And this is also not correct. It is not ethical to use participants for research without letting them know, without getting acceptance or consent from them. Option C, using others' work in our writing without citing them is plagiarism. So option C is correct. If we are uh, like citing something from another different paper, then we have to give them the credits by citing them. Otherwise, it will count as plagiarism if we frame it as if we have done the whole thing. Option D, it is okay to sacrifice lives of humans and animals for research. So sacrificing lives, again, it is ethically it is not correct. So there are many, if you have to do any animal work, then you have to follow the guidelines strictly, and if you are doing any human studies, then you have to get proper consent from them. So the correct answer is only option C. Okay, if the seventh question is clear, we can go to the eighth question. So the eighth question is about plagiarism, meaning uh, how if we cite others' work, then if we use others' work in our paper, then under what circumstances should we cite it, and how exactly should we use others' work? Like, can we just copy paste directly, or do we have to reword it and paraphrase it, etc.? And in which of the conditions we have to cite it? So the first option is it is acceptable to copy paste from another paper as long as we cite it. So this is a common misconception that if you cite it, then you can directly copy paste. So that is not correct, because when you copy paste, you may be acknowledging their uh, like efforts that they have put in, etc. But if you just copy paste without changing anything, then yours the you're also like using their own words as well. So even if you are citing the paper, then you have to rephrase it a little bit and then you can use it. And option B, if we rewrite the message of a research paper in our own words, we do not have to cite the paper. So this is also not correct. Ideally, when we are citing another paper, then we can modify it a little bit to rewrite it, and as well as we have to cite it as well. Option C, if we use a graph from a research paper in our presentation, we have to cite it. So this is correct. Even if we are not using any text, if we are using any graph, table, or any figure, then we have to cite the original source, be it in a presentation, be it in a report, or in another manuscript that we are writing. So option C is true. Option D, if I use information from my own previous publication in a new journal article, I do not have it. So even in this case, even if it is from the paper of the same person, they still have to cite it, and this is called self-citation. And if you don't cite it, then that will be like self-plagiarism. So even if it is the work of the same person, still it has to be cited. So I've just put some links to understand more about plagiarism. So later you can refer to these links. So to the eighth question, the correct answer is option C. And I think someone has asked about how to identify whether MCQ or MSQ. So that it won't be mentioned in the question whether it is single option correct or multi option correct. That you just have to look at the options and see whether only one option is fitting or more options are fitting. So that will be based on the question and the options. It won't be mentioned separately. You have to think yourself and decide.
Ma'am,
Yes.
the fourth option says self citation is possible. Then this also comes under plagiarism, no? If we
So-
cite our own paper, will
Huh.
results into plagiarism.
Sorry, I didn't get you. Can you repeat?
If we cite our own paper,
Yeah.
then again there is a plagiarism, no?
No, that
Because,
won't be plagiarism. You are citing the work, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. If you don't cite it, then that will be self plagiarism.
Okay, so citing is better, you mean to say. If we
Yes,
are
even if it is,
using our own work, then
then also you
also
have
we
to
have to
cite.
cite.
Yes, yes, correct.
So in this way, our citation will increase, na ma'am. Number of citations will increase.
Yes,
So
correct.
anyone can cite their paper as many time as they want, and then it may not be ethical, or
I mean, if
will it
the
be ethical?
context is there, then you have to mention it. So in a previous paper, you would have got a finding, and in the second paper you may be like doing more research about that finding. So if the context is there, then you have to cite it. If there is no context and you're simply for the sake of citations, if you're citing it, then that is not good practice.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Ma'am, one more question.
Just for
Uh,
understanding perspective, if I may submit, would like to discuss the option A, how a word can change a narrative. It has been like this, it is acceptable to use or draw reference from another paper as long as we cite it, the answer would have been true, isn't it? How copy
Your
paste is
voice-
changing the narrative from positive to negative.
Sorry, your voice
What-
is not very clear. Can you check your mic once?
Ma'am, am I audible now?
Hello?
Am I audible now, ma'am?
Can you type it? Your voice is breaking. I am not able to hear you properly.
Okay, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Can you type the question in the chat box? You were asking something about option A, I think, from whatever I got. So option A, it is acceptable to copy paste as long as we cite it. So in the case of copy pasting, you're using their own words. So you're using their concept. So that is like intellectually you're getting something from them. So for that you are citing. So that is done, but you're also using the same wording as they have used. So in that case, you have to use quotation marks as well. So if you want to copy paste from another paper, then you have to use quotes in that case. And in general, like if you for smaller pieces, it is okay to like use quotes and cite it. But for longer pieces, it is better to paraphrase. Okay, let's go to the 9th question.
Ma'am, someone has posted a question on this thing message box.
Oh, 1 minute, let me see. Can you shed a light on patch plagiarism? Do you have any doubts? Okay, then I can just explain it. So, patch plagiarism means it's not like you have written the whole thing without any citations, but there may be some parts where you have not cited it properly or you have not paraphrased it properly. So, that would be patch plagiarism. Or it may be like from different sources you have taken different sentences, like the first sentence may be from one paper, second may be from second paper, but you have not cited it properly. So you have not copy pasted the entire thing there, but you have still not cited properly and you have used multiple sources that you have not cited. So that is called as patch plagiarism. Okay, let's go to the 9th question. So in this question, like a general paragraph is given. So when you're writing a paper, you will actually realize that in some points it may be confusing whether we have to cite it, whether it is general knowledge. Like for example, if you write something like the sun rises in the east, then it is a fact and it is general knowledge, but there may be a confusion as to whether to cite it or not. So this is an exercise based on that, and here we have to use our think properly and decide whether we have to, if there is a statement, then is a citation for that statement necessary or not. So I think this is like a paragraph, so you can take 5 minutes or more to read it. And wherever you think there is a reference missing, that part you can type in the chat box. Again, this is also just a practice question. In the assignments, you won't be getting questions like this. This is just for conceptual understanding.
Ma'am, we are ready for discussion.
Okay. I'll just go to the next slide then. So the first statement is like it's not citing anything, it's just a general statement. That's why uh, there are no citations. And then the second statement starting here, it is not cited. But when you say that there are a lot of benefits to legalizing marijuana, then you have to cite it. Like, uh, if there are actually studies which have shown that there are some benefits, so here it is needed. And the next statement is just about the essay. In this statement, I will explore, so that is not needed. Their citation is not needed. And then I think this next statement is already cited because uh, like that is like classifying the plant, etc. So that has been cited. And sorry, after that it has
Ma'am,
been
what about this? Today, 11 states, including California, allow the legal use of medical marijuana. I think this statement should be cited, no, because it has been taken from
hmm,
Abu Shirai, something like.
yeah, that citation is already they have mentioned, right?
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So, and then the next statement, it has been used by humans for a long time, and people for thousands of years. So, these are again general statements and they are not saying anything particularly. But if you look at the next statement, they are talking about something very, like they are giving specific numbers. They have been used legally for 150 years till the 1937 tax law. So, here these specific details have to be cited. And then once again the next statement is a general statement. And then the next statement, today 11 states including California government, and this statement also has very like specific details, so those have to be cited. And finally, this there is a quote, death from marijuana overdose is almost impossible. So here they have quoted it, meaning that they have copy pasted from the original source. That's why it is in quotes. But in this case, it is not just enough to put it in quotes, and you also have to cite it. So their reference is needed. And the last statement, there are strong reasons why marijuana should be legalized. So again, this is just what the author's point of view is, and that need not be cited. So the extra ones are benefits to legalizing marijuana. There you have to cite studies which have shown that there are benefits, and the specific details have to be cited, like cannabis legally for 150 years. So those there we have added the references.
Ma'am, citation means you have to put the statement under quote, and also we have to give the reference like from where we have quoted, right?
If you are copy pasting, you have to put it under quotes. If you are paraphrasing, then you just have to give the reference, just the source you have to give. You don't have to put it within quotes.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Let's go to the 10th question. This is also about uh, like ethical practices in research. So this question is about acceptable practices in data analysis in research. So the first option is changing a reading on a V versus I graph. So here they have mentioned that just because one of the point is not in a straight line, you want to change the reading, but that is not correct. That is, first of all, it is ethically wrong, and secondly, if you are getting that one point is not in the straight line, then it may actually be telling something about the experiment itself. So you may be missing important information if you ignore the outlier. So option A is not correct. Option B, using the same data set for hypothesis testing. So sorry, the slide has changed. Option B is, suppose I notice a trend between two variables in dataset A and come up with the hypothesis. I can use the same dataset for hypothesis testing. So the first dataset you can use, but what would be better is to like do it as a different experiment. And another problem with this is that we may be more biased towards the data, or we may just select the cherry pick the data to suit our hypothesis. So 2 is not very good practice. Option C, enhancing the brightness or contrast of just a small part of a microscopy image. So this is problematic, because if it is okay to change the brightness contrast, but you have to do it for the entire image. You can't do it for just one part, because microscopy data analysis, in some cases you have to analyze the intensity levels, right? Whether the signal is fluorescent signal is more, or whether the fluorescent signal is less. So in those cases, if you, for example, if you're changing it in a part where you have the treated sample, but in the untreated or control sample you have not changed it, then the differences that we see will be coming from these manipulations and not from the data itself. So we may be getting false negatives if we do that. So option C is not correct. And when whatever image processing that you do, that has to be documented properly. But that doesn't mean that you can do these things like just a small part of the image you change the brightness contrast. If you are changing the brightness contrast of the entire image, then you can do that, and you have to make sure to mention it as well. Option D, using arrow marks or circles to point to certain features of an image from microscopy data. So this is acceptable. You're not changing the original image in any way. You're just putting an arrow mark to show the reader that that is where they should be focusing. So option D is the correct answer for the 10th question. Any questions? Okay, so these are the 10 questions I wanted to discuss for today's session. And if you noticed, I had some resources for plagiarism. You can go through that. And I have some more, like just a small paraphrase or a quote from a book. So this is entirely taken from this book called The Curse of Knowledge, because there is some part where you all in the lectures they also talk about the importance of communicating our research well. So you can read the first paragraph and the second paragraph. So if you see, the first paragraph it's a very long statement first of all, and there are like it's basically very confusing, and the terms used also have a lot of jargon. But if you read the second statement, it is written in a more simplified way and it is easier to understand. So just because you're communicating research doesn't mean you have to use complex knowledge. You have to make sure that the reader is able to understand it. So that is this slide. So today we have discussed all the 10 questions. If you have any doubts or if you have missed any question, then you can stay back and we can discuss that. I'll be on the
Question
call
6,
till
can
8.
you,
Sorry, can you repeat?
question 6, can you repeat once more? Means the
Oh, I'll just go to
justification
the
for
sixth
one of the
one.
option. Yeah,
Yeah,
start by reading an elementary textbook.
yeah, that, yeah. You have any doubt in that option?
Yeah, usually means for any research, it is told that your capability and the level should match for optimum thing. Then starting by reading elementary textbook, how it can be justified?
So this is for a, if you have to read about a new field, in the question it is mentioned new field, right? Then the
Okay,
our
yeah,
skill level may be low, so we have to do something corresponding to that, something that is easy to understand. Because in the starting itself, if you read research papers, then there may be a lot of jargon, lot of new terms we may not be aware about, so that will be very challenging. So in
yes.
the initial starting phase, it is better to read something easy like a textbook.
Means just when it is just field, then A and C may be right, and when it
Yeah,
is new field, B and D are right.
yeah.
Okay, correct. No? Yes.
Ma'am,
Yes.
I have a question regarding to assignment number 5.
Okay.
This question was according to the Nobel laureate Herbert Simon. It takes approximately 4 to 5 years of working 8 hours a day in an area to become an expert in the area. So, ma'am, can you elaborate this option?
Actually, here we don't discuss the assignment questions directly because they will be graded, right? So those
No, I am
questions
not
you have to
asking
solve
whether it
on
is
their
correct
own.
or not. I am just asking whether this. Can you elaborate on this point? That is my question. I'm not
Ac-
looking for
yeah,
you
the
to answer this question.
answer also we won't discuss, and any of the question or the options also they have asked us not to discuss in the sessions. So if you see in the, if you want, you can watch the video lectures to get more clarity on it.
I went through so many times, but I had a doubt in it. Anyway, no issues.
Okay. So
Ma'am, is
those
the
who,
meeting over? Can we leave now?
yes, yes, those who don't have any doubts, you can leave the meeting. If you have any doubts, you can stay back and ask.
Ma'am, please repeat about question number 10 about option C.
Okay, I'll go to the last slide. So option C is enhancing the brightness or contrast of just a small part of a microscopy image. So the good practice is that if you are changing any image before publishing it, you have to do the change for the entire image. If you are changing the brightness contrast, it has to be done for the whole image and not just for a small part of the image. Because as I was explaining that in some biological concepts, or not just biology, other fields also use microscopy, then the intensity of the image will be important for the analysis. For example, there will be some treated cells or some untreated cells, and we have to compare the intensity between the two. And if we increase the intensity of just one part of the image, then we can't be sure of the result that we see. Like there will be a confusion whether we are seeing that change, increased intensity because of the data processing or because of the actual effect of the drug. So whatever image manipulations you do, you have to do it for the entire image.
Okay, ma'am.
Ma'am, just to add on, ma'am, sorry to interrupt. The word is enhancing, not manipulation. Suppose we are working on some virus and there are lots of strands, DNA strands. And after all the data deductions and analysis, we come to a point where we are drawing a conclusion, and that image is being, that particular strand is enhanced. Isn't it justified, ma'am? And how would a result without enhancing that strand would be more applicable and reliable? The word is not manipulating, it's enhancing the brightness or contrast of just a small part of a microscopic image. As you said, it is acceptable, but with a caution.
So in this context, like enhancing the brightness or contrast, if you do it for just a small part, then that would be considered as manipulating the data. Because even though the intensity is low, then you may be doing some like for example here you may increase the brightness, and because of that the intensity may become high, so that will be considered as manipulation. But if you have to highlight something within the data, like if there is some small feature in the microscope image, then like in option D you can just point it out with an arrow graph or arrow mark or put a circle around it.
In fact, ma'am, I could read, not exactly read in detail, but I could go through a study about the COVID virus 2 years back. One of the reports had highlighted and rather enhanced and zoomed on a particular strand of that virus during the second wave. I doubt, ma'am, because it's okay. Manipulation is different, but enhancing a particular image or a microscopy image just to pinpoint a specific point or observation of a research
In this
should not
context it
at
can
all
be used.
unacceptable.
Like if there is some small detail in the microscopy image, and then
Yes,
like
ma'am.
suppose you have to zoom in and show it to the reader, then it is fine.
Yes.
Because then in that case the final output is the zoomed in image finally. So for that
Yes.
part it can be done. Yes, you're correct.
Yes. And ma'am, even coming to the B point, research, during the process of research itself is an evolving process, isn't it, ma'am? And during the
Correct.
process of research, a researcher may come across lots of areas or a population where the research hypothesis will be associated with the research problem. So when during a data set of A, there is a chance that there could be a relation or a causal relationship, and a researcher would like to incorporate that data set. I think again, research should be open and pragmatic enough to let that researcher allow that data set to be used in the research process. But again, during the answers, as you had mentioned, it can be used, but with a note. It is
Yes,
acceptable,
yes.
but with a note.
Yes, correct. You have to be careful while doing it.
Yes.
Yes.
Probably there is a difference. It is not unethical. It is difference between being unacceptable and unethical. Here, the point is not being unethical. The point is how your study or that data set or how your image, which we have increased or contrast has been enhanced, should be acceptable in the process of research, isn't it, ma'am?
Yes, correct. And whatever
Right,
you
ma'am.
do, it has to be clearly mentioned as well.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
have to
Yes.
document it as well. You're correct.
That's why if it's not a big of a problem, ma'am, if you could show the answers in the next slide. You have written yourself that it is acceptable or acceptable with a no or with a caution,
Yes, correct.
right, ma'am? Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for clearing that up.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the class, even, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So those who don't have any doubts, you can leave the meeting. If you have any doubts or if you have missed any question, you can stay back and we can discuss that.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am. Hello. Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, you can go ahead.
Ma'am, sorry, I missed the question number 7 and question number 8, ma'am. Can you just repeat, please?
I'll just go to the seventh question.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. You have any doubt or you just missed the question in the class?
No, I just missed the question,
Oh,
ma'am.
okay. You can take some time and see it. If you have any doubts, we can discuss it then.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, ma'am. I got the answer. I think if I'm not wrong, it's C.
Yeah, the correct answer is option C. I'll go to the eighth question then. anybody has any doubts, you can ask. It's almost 8 o'clock, so I'll be ending the session now. If there are no doubts, then we can meet next week Monday.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. See you next week on Monday.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.